Hey guys, it's Brian Johnson here with another Device Talks podcast. And today we'll be talking to Jeff McCaulley. He's the president and CEO of Smiths Medical, which is headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Speaking of Minnesota, have you registered yet for AdvaMed 2016? This year is the first time the conference will be in Minnesota's Medical Alley on October 17th through the 19th. Personally, this is my 6th year attending the AdvaMed meeting, and every year it gets better, honestly. The programming covers major trends and challenges facing the medical technology industry and brings industry leaders, investors, business executives, policymakers, and media from all over the world together under one roof for the biggest medtech event of the year. For more information and to register, visit advamed2016.com. That's advamed2016.com. And thank you for downloading this podcast, and we'll see you in Minnesota. So, Jeff, thank you for joining us today. I wanted to talk to you about culture, and there's an old, I don't know if it's a cliche or an axiom or a trope, and I have no idea who it's originally attributed to. That comes from the tech culture world or Silicon Valley, which is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I know that you have invested a lot in culture at Smiths Medical, and I was wondering how you feel about that statement and how you put that into action over at Smiths.
Well, I certainly think it rings true. Much of what you hear often is that, there are lots of great strategies, but it's ultimately about executing the strategy, and much of that execution is about people. So where strategy often fails is in the execution phase, and I think very quickly when you look at why execution is so hard, you often get confronted with the culture and what is it in the culture that makes it difficult to execute, makes it difficult to be successful. So I think we've all seen many great strategies fail, and I think it oftentimes comes down to the culture and why it was hard for people to accomplish what they originally felt really excited about doing. Because let's face it, we're all typically very excited about our strategies and believe in our strategies, but oftentimes, we're less than enamored with the outcome. And I think that rings true of most surveys that you see, that most executives today feel that execution is one of the hardest things to drive. And my sense is that really comes down to the culture.
So let's talk about how in your tenure at Smiths Medical, when you arrived at Smiths Medical, did you have in mind a particular culture you wanted to replicate, or was it something that you wanted to create of your own imagination or own experience?
Well, so I came to Smiths about 2 years ago, and through the recruiting process, I was really given two mandates. One was to re-engage people and to kind of restart growth or reignite growth. The company had been flat to declining for just about 5 years. I think the prior 5-year CAGR was negative 1.5%. And so, I knew that focusing on people and understanding why growth had stalled in a company that really has, great brands in a solid portfolio, was, why had that happened and why, were people less than engaged, and understand the company had gone through a couple of failed sales efforts. There were a couple of approaches to buy the business. So I think there was a lot of disruption that had gone on within the culture as well. So I knew coming in that in order to re-engage people, we'd need to focus a lot on the culture. And so I came in believing that was important from the recruitment process, but also from my own experience. I've seen really great cultures in my career and not so great cultures. And so you just understand where it works well and why it's important. But I didn't necessarily have a specific vision. I've been in healthcare some 25 years, but I didn't know this industry in particular. I didn't know these products in particular. So I really spent my first 3 months just engaging people and listening. And I was fortunate that when I came in, we had just completed a biennial employee engagement survey. So I had a lot of rich data in which to engage the organization around, and then just held a lot of town halls and really heard some really clear messages about, why people were frustrated, what they thought was working and not working. A lot of it had to do with leadership, visibility, access, communication. A lot of it had to do with empowerment. A lot of it had to do with priorities or the lack of clear priorities. And so we really, set out to tackle those things in helping the culture to thrive and helping people to feel like they could be successful and execute according to the strategic plan or the operating plan.
So the company was doing employee surveys already, so they were at least somewhat listening to what their employees said. But I take it that there's a lot more than just sort of taking a survey and then maybe putting in a new coffee machine or having some open office hours, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that people can react to these employee engagement surveys. We wanted to take it very seriously, and we were very direct with employees that we took it seriously and that we were listening and that they were going to see us take specific action. So we literally created a list of the things that employees told us were most challenging in the culture, and we created very specific responses to those things that we began to address over time. We did it in the context of a broader initiative that we called Building Our Future, which was really about building the company that everyone dreamed Smiths Medical could be. And we talked specifically about building a high-performance company and a winning culture. But within that initiative, having the very clear line of sight between specifically what employees were telling us and specifically what actions we were taking helped us to put some early points on the board, and I think gain a lot of credibility with employees that we were serious about listening and really serious about creating a culture where people could thrive, where they could feel like they could do their best and meet their goals every day or throughout the course of the year or multiple years, depending on what projects they were working on.
Right. So you come out of a culture, you started your career at GE, as many medical device CEOs have under Jeff Immelt. And what was it about that culture that created so many, I would say, incredibly high-performing professionals who went on to head companies? What could you crystallize any of that for us? I mean, is there anything that you could put your finger on?
A couple of things. I mean, when I see a number of those people that you're referencing, we talk about it a lot as just a really special time. I think it was a neat time within the industry. I think it was a special time within GE. The leadership there was really strong. There were great role models and great mentors to learn business and leadership and how to operationalize the business. There was incredible alignment at the top, which I think was one of the most impressive aspects of GE, and there was just an incredible commitment to developing people. But I think the most important thing was there was just this winning spirit about GE. I mean, you hear people talk about culture as this idea of the beliefs and mindsets that really drive people's behaviors. And there was just a belief within GE that anything was possible, that the organization could accomplish great things and ultimately would accomplish great things. And even wherever you were in the company, you owned your little piece of the enterprise, depending on where you were. And when I started, it was certainly, I had a very little piece of the enterprise, but you believed it was yours, and you had the ability to do great things with it. And if you did, you'd get more, and you'd get a chance to grow. And I think that was just so pervasive within the culture.
And when we talk about culture, I think there is sometimes people think about culture, they immediately go to, what they hear about what goes on at Google or in some startup companies with the foosball table and the nap pods. And I think some people misidentify it as sort of creating a playful environment or an environment that's not serious with business. Of course, that's not the case, right? I mean, because GE certainly doesn't seem like a company that is coddling its employees.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. One of the things I did when I came to Smiths and we started to build out this initiative was we got to a point where we felt really good about what we were doing, but also realized this was probably bigger than us. And so we reached out to one of the premier consultancies in the culture shaping world, the Katzenbach Group. And what was really interesting in our first meeting with them was they said, it's not just about culture, it's about building a high performance company through culture. And they really encouraged us to focus beyond culture and focus on the alignment of culture, strategy, and our operating model and operating mechanisms. And I have to say that last piece was critical, because what I've probably learned most over the last couple of years, where we've had the most impact, and I would say we still have the most work to do, is where the operating mechanisms fight the culture you're actually trying to build. And I'll give you some examples, right?
Yeah,
so one of the things we talk about is how do we make the company fearless? How do we really spark innovation and get people to be bolder and more innovative? And it sounds great, right? And people are really excited about that. But then when you get your G's and O's and your annual bonus plan, and it's all tied to metrics, which by their very nature drive incremental thinking. Right? You'll never change the culture.
Yeah.
Right? And so you really have to, if you're serious about culture, in my opinion, you have to get serious about where everything you actually do day to day is defining the real culture, not the culture you espouse. And so you have to really get serious about simple things like, how do you do business reviews? You have to get more granular. What are you doing about delegation of authority? If you want an empowered culture, but your delegation of authority approvals are clearly, espousing micromanagement, you're never really going to have an empowered culture. So you really have to look at every interaction that either you have with the organization or the organization is forced to have by the nature of policies and procedures and just the way things have always been done. And for us, that's been truly the most liberating, is to begin to systematically attack where the operating mechanisms are really fighting the culture that we want to build.
So, I mean, do you mean even in changing compensation and bonus structure? Yeah.
We've changed org structure. We've changed bonus plans. We've changed targeting. We've changed the way we do G&Os and G&O alignment within the organization. I mean, we've really gone after just about every aspect, and again, we haven't changed it all. Trust me, there's still a lot more work to do, but I think we've been quite intentional about making the big changes that'll have the most profound impact on the culture. And you know, we've been very clear with the organization that this is a journey. Probably one of the hardest things to do is change culture. So we've been very clear with the organization that our cultural vision is ambitious. We're not that company today, but we're absolutely committed to building that company. And more importantly, we've given them an invitation to help build that company and help shape, you know, what we're doing so that we can become that company.
And I know one of the things that you're really proud of is that you revamped the entire corporate headquarters at Smith's Medical. That was, and from what you told me, it seems like it was a pretty ambitious undertaking. How do you reflect some of these values in how you build a new headquarters, and maybe give me some thoughts on that?
Sure. So I think this is probably one of the most visible examples of changing the culture and becoming a new company. The old facility was just that. It was a very old facility. You know, there was clear separation between the executives and everyone else. It was a hard place to collaborate because of the design of the facility. And, you know, we really wanted to move to a culture where it was much more engaging, where there were a lot more interactions throughout the day, where there was more collaboration, more empowerment, and just a more of a winning spirit within the building. And so, you know, we really set out to create a new facility that I like to say is more like high tech than medtech. Traditionally, more like what you would see at Google and AT&T. And in fact, we actually spent a lot of time with AT&T. If you know much about their Workspace of the Future initiative, they spent a lot of time studying how technology teams work best together. So we learned a lot from what they had done over the years and implemented a lot of that in our new facility. So it's a huge difference. So we got rid of most offices. There are many fewer offices. All offices are, you know, very small, 10 by 12, 10 by 14. And the building is predominantly collaboration space and meeting space of all different varieties, so that you give people, you know, different meeting venues and extensive use of technology. And so it really feels like a different company when you walk in the door today, and there's just a different buzz within the culture.
Right.
And so it has had a dramatic impact on the business.
So what was the downgrade from the old chief executive office to the new one in terms of square footage?
You know, it's probably a third the size.
Did the old one have wood paneling on it? I just thinking of this very old fashioned.
It did. You know, it was actually an old, I think, pharma building at one point, and so. It had some very old designs and some legacy aspects to it.
Right. So it's interesting. You know, I think when you talk about building culture, in the way now people find places they want to work, it seems like companies really can't just talk the talk. More now than ever, you're seeing a high level of transparency available to job seekers and other people who are interested in your company. I mean, I'm thinking really specifically of like websites like Glassdoor, which I think have had a real impact on companies hiring. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on sites like that, or that site in specifically. I mean, it's a pretty, they open the kimono a lot.
Well, they do, and I think you have to just recognize that they're there, and that people are going to use them. And certainly in medtech, I think they got a lot of traffic. And so, there's different strategies around Glassdoor. Some companies take a very proactive approach to managing Glassdoor and responding to every response. I mean, we haven't done that. We've let Glassdoor be Glassdoor, and we've focused more on our employees and genuinely improving engagement. And I think you can see in our Glassdoor journey, we've made substantial improvements over the last couple of years, but clearly there's still work to do. We don't react to every negative post, but we certainly take seriously what themes we're hearing from the organization. I think generally we look more towards what employees are telling us in our engagement survey. We literally just got our biennial engagement survey back. So I walked in the door 2 years ago and had a fresh copy. We just completed our biennial survey and got the results back last month. We had 94% participation rate in our survey, which in and of itself is pretty fantastic. So employees know we're listening and want to give us feedback, and the results were great. We improved over 10% from where we were before, and employees gave us a lot of really positive feedback, but also some clear direction on what they still want us to do more of, or better, and go deeper. So we'll do some course correction on our Building Our Future initiative and roll that back out to the employees as the next wave of the journey.
So Smith's is a it's a $1 billion plus company. It's got thousands of employees. In terms of sort of companies much smaller than yours, is there a threshold for where companies really need to be thinking about their culture, or how much does the small company, the startup company, really need to think about building a winning culture in terms of when they even write their business plan? Because so much of those early days are just keeping the lights on and pushing forward. But I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, just my own opinion. I think it's important at any size of company, maybe even more important in smaller companies. Again, if you believe culture is really going to either enable or impede your ability to execute and execute better than others, I think it's important at any size. I think as a large company, you have to be more formal about it because you have a culture. I mean, regardless of where you are, your company has a culture today, and you're not just going to come in and rewrite it, because frankly, much in the culture is very long-standing and deep. And so in order to start to reshape that, I think you have to be, very programmatic about it, very intentional about it. And so maybe in smaller companies, you don't have the ability to go at it the way we've gone at it, but I think it's equally important to focus on culture and can really set you up for, where a lot of small companies struggle is making the leap to becoming a larger company, and I think something culture can facilitate that.
All right. Clearly, in terms of the public perception, tech and Silicon Valley have the highest imprimatur in terms of this modern, successful culture. You said you come from outside of medtech. How do you think the industry is doing in terms of thinking this way, and how does it compare to other industries you've been in?
Well, I've really been in medtech all of my post-college career. I spent a little time in the aerospace industry, through my studies, and then just being a part of large companies like GE, like Smiths, where you see other industries. You get a chance to see what other industries are like. But I think what's unique about Silicon Valley is there's a cool factor, and they really make the most of it. I think what's so unbelievable about medtech is what we do for patients, and I think we can make that really cool as well. And that's a big part of our focus is, how do you just shift the culture a little so we're not just these, great purpose-driven companies, but there's a lot of fun in what we do and how we do it, that people can come here and really thrive, both inside and outside of work. And I think that's the other thing that high tech does very well is there's just this view that it's not just about work, it's about, helping people to thrive in life. And I think that's something, we can do better as organizations, and certainly something, we're focused on as well. But there's a lot, to medtech that is great. And we shouldn't shy away from how attractive the medtech industry is to young people who are just starting their careers. Maybe Google and some of those folks have a leg up on it, but I think we can compete voraciously for talent with the kind of things we're doing in the industry today. I think the millennials are very focused on doing something with purpose and meaning, and less focused simply on career. And so I do think that's one of the things that we in medtech have going for us, because there's no better place when you see the impact of our products on people's lives. It's really cool. We literally just had one of our college interns who became a full-time employee about a year ago. His wife just gave birth to their first daughter, and there was a relatively small complication, but as a soon-to-be parent, any complication's a major complication. But our devices were used in both the medication delivery for mom and daughter, and just to see the impact on him. How cool is that, right? When you're just starting your career and you're a part of building these products that then are used on your own wife and newborn daughter. I don't know how high tech competes with that.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So I'm in looking at your history. Clearly, something that kind of sticks out is you used to be a pole vaulter, and I'm wondering.
You had to dig deep for that one.
I'm wondering if there is any sort of fundamental business lessons that you could take from that endeavor. I've never done it, but I assume there's probably easy corollary with point of no return. But maybe there's something that you hearken back to that you learned there on the track that you use in your business.
Oh, wow. First of all, I would not be mistaken for a pole vaulter today. So that's something you've shared with everyone. Gosh, I don't know. Maybe you got to be a little crazy to do some of the things we do. No, I think the only thing about pole vaulting is it was a great sport that had a lot of engineering aspects to it. So I would probably show my geeky side if I really talked about what was really cool about pole vaulting.
Right.
It's an interesting sport in that it's an individual sport, but track is very much a team sport if you do it the right way. And I do think business is a lot like that. You can choose for business to be an individual sport, or you can choose for business to absolutely be a team sport. And I think those who win consistently choose the latter. And, it's one thing I learned from my coaches at the university was, if you're going to be on this team, you're part of this team. What you do in your individual sport or event is important, but if you're on this team, you're fully a part of this team. And I think that was a great lesson for that kind of sport.
I'm sure there's a much easier corollary and you're also a pilot, so I'm sure there's a much easier corollary in aviation.
Well, I think aviation's more of an interesting one. I mean, there's so many great aspects of aviation. One, I think it's a very high-performance industry in terms of the technology, the systems, the integration, the software, the reliability. They're way ahead of the game in terms of material science and 3D printing and all the directions that I think medtech is moving. I think there's a lot we can learn from the aerospace industry. And in terms of the personal application, I think what's so interesting about aviation is how data driven it is, and kind of everything you have to assemble with a very high glance value, right? You don't get a whole lot of time to see all the systems. You gotta assimilate information very quickly and yet be able to make really, really critical decisions. So one of my favorite books is a book called Certain to Win, which is really a study of air superiority in a world where most of the technology is so far advanced that it really comes back to the pilot and the pilot's ability to process information, make quick decisions, and act. And the whole thing is based on this idea of the OODA loop and continuously working your way through observation, orientation, decision, and action. And those who continuously work through that better, faster, more accurately, ultimately gain an advantage and win the battle or win the war. And I think it really rings true to me in business. How do you create an organization that is more nimble at observing and orienting and deciding and acting and continuing to assess itself relative to the competition and the marketplace. So it's a great read if you ever want a book that maybe comes at it from a different angle, because it's maybe an unconventional approach to business, but I think a really cool one from the aviation world.
Wow, well, I'll take it under advisement. Well, it's great to see. It's great to hear all this discussion about culture and kind of putting the pieces together, and how you help to build a better organization. And I feel like, given the performance that you're seeing, that you're seeing the results that you want. I'm sure there's always. I'm sure you always want to do a little bit better, but it seems like you're, walking the walk, so to speak, when it comes to this.
Well, we're really proud of what we've seen the organization do, how the organization has responded. So we talked about engagement improving substantially, both through informal channels like Glassdoor as well as our own formal survey results. At the same time, we just delivered and are well on our way to delivering our 9th and 10th straight quarters of growth. So, after 5 years of decline, the organization has done a fantastic job in turning around the growth of the business. And we really see a clear path to sustained mid-single-digit growth over the next couple of years as we begin to launch a whole bunch of new products. So we talked about this focus on culture, strategy, and operating model and mechanisms. We talked more about culture and operating mechanisms. The other piece to that is strategy. We won't go deep into that this time, but we've done a lot to reshape the strategy, and that's also paying off. So, we've seen the improvement in engagement. We've seen a really great improvement in growth, although still accelerating towards the level of growth we want. And at the same time, we've seen margins expand almost 150 basis points despite increasing R&D investment from 3% to 6%, despite building a new world headquarters and investing in tools and investing in merit. The company actually hadn't done merit increases for years. One of the first things we committed to was we'd never do that again. We were committed to merit every year and just more committed to employee development. So, I think we're driving the fuel for growth in terms of better operational excellence, allowing us to improve margins and at the same time improve or accelerate investments. All of that leading to a better top line performance. So it's a great start. We're 2 years into what I told the organization early on would be a 5-year journey. In some ways, I think we're ahead of where we thought we would be. All credit to what our employees have done with the license we've given them to help build a great company. So I'm just trying to continue to create that environment for them and watch them continue to do really cool things. That's probably been the most rewarding aspect for me.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your insights, and we'll have to talk strategy on the next call.
Okay. Great, Brian. Thank you so much.